Now it's being recorded. Sorry about that. So we have just done the acknowledgement to country for those who have missed it. Peter, I'm going to let you take over with the presentation of the fabulous new handbook that Queensland Small Business Council's created.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elise. And I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we all join us today. I am on Turrbal and Yagara lands as well, so pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Yes, Peter Mattock, I look after the business services team, or the assistance team, as we like to be known as. We've got two teams in the Queensland Small Business Commissioner's Office. I might go to the next. I don't think I can go to the next slide, can I, Elise?
No.
Perfect.
Just put your finger up like this and I'll change slides.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a good cue. Yeah, so the office was established as a COVID emergency response, and we're being transitioned due to an election commitment to be a permanent service. So yesterday, you might have known that in Parliament that we actually got extended our services until the 30th of April 2022. So people can still access us till then, until our more substantive legislation is passed and we're created in an act of Parliament. So, you know, what do we do? Like I mentioned, we've got two teams, and all of us work on trying to make it easier for any small business in Queensland. And we do that through a range of ways. We've got two teams. Basically, our first team is, we used to be known as Strategic Services. It's now Advocacy. And then Business Services, the other team, which is now, as of yesterday afternoon, called the Assistance Team, to make it a bit easier. So we do advocacy. We go and try and get things like the 80% rebate for cleaning. If you're a contact site in Queensland now and you have to do a deep clean, you can get 80% of those costs rebated to you. And that was something that we advocated for after working closely with businesses who'd been visited by a positive case. And then we do assistance, which mostly sits around commercial leasing disputes. So if any of you have commercial property that you're using at the moment and you've got a landlord and you get into a dispute over anything to do with the lease, if you employ less than 20 full-time equivalent staff, then we can help you with that. And if you had a 15%, it depends if you're a non-for-profit, if it was 15% reduction in turnover last year compared to previous years, or if you're a for-profit and it was a 30% reduction in your turnover last year, you may be eligible to ask your landlord to negotiate rent. So that's one of the services we offer, is a informal resolution and a mediation, like a free mediation service. If you can't sort out that rent relief from last year, that ended on the 31st of December, that arrangement, but we can still help people access that arrangement. But if you've got a dispute about, you know, you're leaving a premises and they won't give you a bond back, and it's a commercial premises, we can help with those during any time. And we get really good success rates with our mediators. Usually used to take last year about 4 hours to do a mediation through us. This year, much more complex, obviously, lots of things going on with the impacts of COVID lingering, and also probably the complexity of issues between landlords and tenants that haven't been able to work out their disputes so far. So we're about 5.25 hours now. We get really good resolution rates though. About 75% of things we're able to sort out before you go to mediation. And at mediation, about half of the time, the mediators are able to help the parties talk about their issue and find a mutual agreement that they can get on with business due to. So I've probably covered all that. What do we get lots of asks, lots of inquiries about assistance for? I've given you a list of them here. lots of businesses are looking to break their leases early, and there is usually no way to break a lease early without a penalty. And so we help them try to navigate what those penalties might look like, and how to negotiate successfully with landlords. And sometimes, got to mention, landlords are also small businesses. So we don't pick a side. We don't advocate for a particular side. What we do is offer the space for both parties to communicate and come to an agreement themselves. There has been lots of arrears this year, and that results in landlords issuing breach notices, so for tenants to leave the premises. And we've got lots of disputes about landlords providing waivers or abatements of rent relief for last year, and then deciding that, oh, well, now you're ending the lease, I'll just take what I said I would waive out of your bank guarantee and keep that, and that's a way for you to pay me back. And so we help them, both tenants and landlords, sort out that. Yeah, so that's a lot of our, like, what we were legislated to do. But the document that I wanted to talk about today really is about more stuff we do than that. So this pie chart here shows that most of our work comes through inquiries, and people ask us all about weird and wonderful things, anything to do with small business. And then we do a fair bit of outreach to try to make sure things like this, so make sure people know what the Small Business Commissioner's Office does. And then we have, I think we're up to nearly 900 disputes since we started in the 28th of May. But since this financial year, we've had 300 contacts, and yeah, we've already got 31 mediations booked for this year. And the last little bit there is advocacy. So we, like I said before, advocate for specific grants or changes to grants, ways to make things simpler, tweaks to the ways that supports are delivered. And yeah, I can tell you a bit more about those things as we go through. Some of the things we're working on. So yesterday was the first meeting of the Summertime Task Force, asked to reinvigorate local areas and CBDs and high streets and stuff like that by allowing businesses to use outdoor space. So that was from a pilot that happened down in Victoria really successfully. So we're trying to steal some of their ideas and get that through Queensland. So the Small Business Commissioner leads that work. Where there's a disaster hub that exists within the Business Queensland site, and we've just trained all of our staff in how to train others in how to show people how to use that. So we did some scenarios in that training about things like a food poisoning, happens in a business. How can the disaster hub happen there? So it's not just about floods, it's also about negative Facebook reviews, all sorts of things, disasters that can happen to small businesses. So we've trained our guys into how to teach others how to use that disaster hub. Probably one of the things that you may have heard of, or may have seen, the contact tracing webpage for Queensland Health. We got some changes made to that, specifically around when people have been listed on that contact tracing page. It's really hard to know whether you can actually reopen or not. Usually the public health unit that's local to you and managing your site won't actually make you close and do a deep clean if you're following your COVID checklist, because all the things you do in the checklist should actually cover you for anybody coming into the site and eliminating that risk of transmission. So it's very rare for a deep clean to happen. Sometimes they do it more for the look of it, but for small businesses, they try not to put them through that and make sure they're just following their checklist. So some of the things we advocate for was that now on that contact tracing website on Queensland Health, it says if the business is open, that's because Queensland Health has given it the okay to be open. And that was a big stigma that we saw when we contacted the 37 small businesses impacted in the March lockdown just before Easter. We contacted all of those businesses, worked out what was going on with them, helped them navigate to the right information. And then thankfully, CCIQ and Elise and the social enterprise crew have come together and put together a booklet now that takes away some of that worry for people who are those exposure sites. So that's good news. We don't have to do that anymore. So we've got lots of other things to keep us busy. So like I mentioned, we've got our own document, and it's basically it's about 13 pages, so it's fairly long, and it gets updated constantly. So in fact, the version that we're going to show you the link to in a moment just got updated this morning. At the front, we have information about all the grants, loans, rebates that we know of that apply to Queensland businesses. And then probably the one that is really lasting piece of help is all of the services that are out there. So there are some amazing services that are available that aren't actually just a piece of money or, you know, a one-off payment. There's some fantastic ones that I'm going to talk about that we really encourage people to be aware of. Also, lots of services to do with mental health, like the new access for small business owners, like Emerald, which is a Queensland-grown health and wellbeing program out of the Thompson Institute and the Sunshine Coast. And we've got information about you know, how to set up employment contracts, how to access funding for training and skills, and all sorts of research resources and tools. Like there's an energy consumption checking tool on there. There's a service that actually will look into your energy waste streams and help you try to find out where, you know, how you can manage those. And they so our team does a lot of referral work to stuff that already exists out there. This tool is about trying to gather them in one space and give people a chance to look at it without going through 100 different websites to get the ins and outs of it. So yeah, the tool itself, I was going to say, I'm hoping that hasn't skipped.
I think it's, yeah.
For some reason, that part of it has just disappeared.
Just disappeared.
But that's okay. That's okay. What we might do, we might go live onto the website, Elise, if you don't mind, and we'll go there. So I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It's supposed to have a big link there, and it just doesn't show up on that PowerPoint by the look of it. I think the image might have just not saved across or something. I think you're on mute, but yeah.
All right, so Queensland Small Business.
Yeah, if you Google QSBC, we usually come up pretty far up the top there. And you might see one that says, what we're looking for is our site that has 6 tiles on it, and there's a tile that says news and updates. News and updates. Yep. And then if you scroll down a little bit, there'll be a link just, I think it's below the newsletters, that says support and help document.
Business, small business support and help.
Yep, that's it.
Woohoo! We're doing it. I'll share my screen.
We're on the fly. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone. I don't know what happened with the PowerPoint there. It's probably my technical inabilities, I would dare say. Yeah, so click on that link there. That'd be perfect. So we always try to go to this page anyway because, and we try to link to there because we update it so often. As you'll see, this version here was updated this morning. And so if you scroll down to page 3, you'll see the look of what we're talking about. And so essentially what it does is it lays out what's the name of the support. So if we stop there, Elise, you know, there's one here that's the COVID Business Support Grant non-employing sole traders, right? So we'll give you a little bit of information about that. It's a $1,000 one-off payment to non-employing sole traders or trusts or companies who aren't employing people. And it's eligible for those who've suffered a decline in turnover of more than 30% due to the lockdown from the 1st to the 8th of August. And there's an application form there that you can go along and follow that. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see there's things like the crew keeper and music keeper. They're one-off payments specifically for the live entertainment industry. People like lighting technicians, sound technicians, roadies, stuff like that can access that, and then also music makers themselves. Things you might not be aware of, liquor licensing fees have been waived from the Office of Liquor and Gaming. So if anyone's running a social enterprise that has a liquor license, good to know. There's that cleaning rebate in the white there, the third one down that we advocated for, and so people can get those costs back. A little bit further down, Elise, if you keep scrolling, we get into sort of more of the general services that are around there. So you might see things on that page like the Business Energy Advice Program. That's that program I was talking about, where if you've got between 6 and 20 employees, it's a fantastic service set up specifically for small businesses, and looking at ways for them to help you save on your energy bill. And they do things like, for example, in Christmas Island, they're doing a project to get together all of those small businesses on that island and try to negotiate a better deal for them. But for small businesses in Queensland, they'll look at your individual bill and help you navigate your way through trying to negotiate a better deal on your electricity. If, for instance, I mentioned before we had some free mediation available between tenants and landlords. You might not know about the dispute resolution centres that are from the Department of Justice and Attorney General. So say you have somebody who isn't paying one of your invoices, you can actually access free mediation through the dispute resolution centres to mediate that dispute and try and get an outcome before having to go to QCAT or a court trying to sue them. So a lot less expensive way for small businesses try to resolve their disputes without having to go to the expense of those kind of things. EcoBiz, if you haven't heard of it, fantastic service, looks at all of your streams from waste, water and electricity, and generally I think it's around between a 5 and 15% saving on costs on average for the businesses that go to EcoBiz. So we know in these really tough times, it's not always possible to get more revenue in. You have to look at how you cut your costs. And so that's why we've got some of those in there. The Griffith Tax Clinic and the JCU Tax Clinic, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're federally funded tax clinics run by a tax practitioner, but supported by tax students at uni. And so there's no cost to the small businesses and or non-for-profits, and they don't do tax returns. What they do is help you navigate your requirements for tax. So things like, should I actually be paying fringe benefit tax, or should I not be paying fringe benefit tax on certain things? What are the tax implications of me getting a grant, for instance, and how would that impact me? So that's where those tax clinics can help you. I'll probably keep going on. Yell out if anybody has any specific ones that they think they want to look at. But we'll keep scrolling down. This is where I wanted to stop. These are some of the best supports that we've got that we know about. You may have heard of the Small Business Financial Counselling Service. If you haven't, do yourself a favour and Google them. They're a service funded by the federal and state governments jointly. There's a version of them specifically for tourism businesses, which is the top one there. And then further down the page in the peach color, second from the bottom, is the small business version of that, run by the same non-for-profit, funded by state and federal government. And they help small businesses get into the nitty-gritty of things like their cash flow, negotiating with their creditors and debtors, looking at how their invoicing systems are impacting that cash flow and what they could do to tweak those, looking at helping them as they assist with applying for grants, and they also assist with applying for credit. And so if your social enterprise is looking for funding, it's a really good place to go to and help them get your financial reports sorted out so that they're accurate and ready to go for those types of applications. Some of the things that they've done, they go out and spend 12 months usually with the small business once they're engaged with them, and they'll check in on them at regular intervals. One of the businesses recently, Jody, the small business financial counsellor, asked, could you just bring up your your turnover for this month? And it was taking a little while, and she said to the small business owner, "Oh, are you using Xero?" And she said, "Yeah, I am." And I'm going through and I'm ticking all of the ones so I can create the report. Jody was actually able to show her some of the automatic reporting functions that were in Xero. So to help her she said it cut probably about 3.5 hours out of her week just by having someone sit with her and go, actually, Xero does this, or MyOb does that, or, so they're experts in all of the technology as well. So I won't go through every single thing, because I know we only have a limited amount of time, but we've put together this document. It's worth going through and having a look. You can do a word search on it as well to find particular items. And we update this all the time when there's new things available. Probably one of the things that we don't have, at least, is information in here about if you've been a positive site in a positive COVID case site, if they visited you. But I believe you and CCIQ have worked together to put together a resource on that.
Yeah, so you will have seen everyone. So can I stop sharing that screen for you now? Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, I'm done. I'll have a look to see if there's any questions while you bring that up. See if there's any questions in chat.
Yeah, were there any questions at all for Peter?
Rachel.
I can ask a question. Hi. One thing that I know that I've noticed, and a lot of other social enterprise have noticed, is that we're always just that one thing off being able to tick the boxes for a grant or a job maker or a job, what's it called? There was all of those different things. Yeah. Is there a service to be able to have that sort of intermediary between whether it's a grant or because obviously I know that you I could see that you're offering that sort of thing for rental assistance, but is there something that we can go to when we're just so close, like maybe a few days off a job maker or something like that?
Yeah. Well, we definitely do advocacy on behalf of any small business, whether it be non-for-profit or for-profit. So that would include social enterprises as well. Our success, we don't have any legislated power to say, you need to change these guidelines or you need to consider this. But what we can do is highlight where there's gaps and where those gaps are disadvantaging businesses that actually really need the support.
Yeah.
So, we can't claim credit for this solely, but we did a lot of advocacy around when the business support grants came out, so the $10,000 business support grants. We advocated very strongly that we were receiving a lot of inquiries from non-employing businesses, sole traders, trusts, things like that weren't eligible. And eventually there was that $1,000, which isn't a lot, but it's better than nothing at all. And so we were able to change that. things we haven't been able to change, Rachel, for instance, is being registered for GST.
Yeah.
Because there's other things going on at play that just make it very difficult for them to include grants where there's no GST, not registered for GST.
Yeah, I understand that. Is there somewhere that, because I know also from your end, you need to know the stories to hear the stories to be able to advocate for us. So where
Correct.
can we submit these things?
How
we
gotcha.
let you know?
Yeah. So on our website, when you go to the contact us, there's a web form, contact us online. And that is honestly the simplest way to do it, because we get all your details in one go.
Yeah.
And you can write in there, as much as you like, but we always have somebody ring you back and find out more. Yeah.
Also, and just another little comment, sorry, I'll be quick. Just with EcoBiz, obviously the landscape has changed. There's a lot more remote working, so it would be awesome for EcoBiz to be available for those working from home.
Yep.
Yeah, we've started talking about that one too, Rach. Yeah. Muriel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. I'm Muriel from Full Circle Fibres. I've got one employee at the moment, but she's moving on to another contract soon. I work with lots of manufacturers, not just here in Southeast Queensland. So some of my customers are down in Victoria, some of my suppliers are down in Victoria, and I'm affected by the yo-yo of COVID lockdowns there, or their restrictions because they can't access the manufacturers that make products with my fabric. I'm not going to see that impact for months. And I'm going to give you another example. A friend of mine in the industry lives in northern New South Wales. Their business is at Burleigh. One of the aspects of their business in Burleigh is an automatic cutter, right? Cuts out the garments. The person that operates it lives in northern New South Wales. They've now lost 3 weeks of production. Dozens of people now have no work either side of the border. They'll still be getting revenue from the stock they're currently selling, but they've lost 3 weeks production that's going to kick down the track. And so you see some of this stuff of, did you lose revenue immediately, which seems to suit cafes and bars and all that kind of thing, but nothing seems to be set up for those of us that actually don't work in sort of direct people to people or hospitality or anything like that. And the fact that I might not have employees, but other people might have employees that can't come to work, and that affects their business to buy something from me. Or if you've got people on, I know this affected one of my manufacturers here, is their customers pay them on such long lead times, their revenue won't drop for another 90 days. So they're not going to see it now. They're going to see it, if they have a drop in orders. So a lot of these things seem to function very much around the businesses we face every day, rather than the ones that are all B2B in the background. And
that's right.
what can we do about that?
We can keep advocating for it, because we've got stories from concrete finishing on walls manufacturers, through to pigment manufacturers, through to, and I was actually down there yesterday at the small business border hub at Kira, which is, it's ironic because we can't really do anything about changing the rules of the border. The border's closed. I can't physically do anything about the person who operates the machine in Burleigh being stuck on the other side. But we can hear the stories and then make sure that Marie, our commissioner, is advocating for those as well. But I can assure you, Muriel, although it's really good to hear your story and know about those knock-on effects, is nothing new, and it's nothing that we haven't been advocating for. That was one of the exact things that we brought up, was that manufacturers or B2B businesses, you've said, for example, the lockdown grant, you have to show within a 7-day period, including one of those days, a downturn in revenue. Well, that's not going to happen for those types of businesses. So that's a work in progress for us. Like lots of things in government, we don't know how successful we're being until something changes. We very rarely get any indication that we've had a win until it's announced formally in the media.
And I have to say, QSEC and CCIQ have also been, we've been sitting at those tables with the Small Business Commissioner, and those things, Muriel and Rachel, come up all the time. And, we have been able to relate exact stories as well. compiling them on the Small Business Commissioner's website is really powerful. But having the voices of all the peak bodies coming together as the commissioners, brought together groups of people to discuss is actually helping to tell the story across the whole of the sectors and the industries.
Yeah.
I also
The only
flag
other,
just another issue affecting manufacturers. I
Yep.
do a lot of stuff with local manufacturers nationally, but even that internationally, freight is all over the place. Costs
Yeah.
are all over the place. The way to counter that, everybody's having to hold more stock. Now, the one thing government never, ever, 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 ever wants to fund is stock.
Yep.
But the one thing to give people buffer and resilience is to be able to afford to just hold a little bit more inventory so they can respond. Because, you sort of see these strange peaks and troughs of opportunity because everybody locks down, then they all go shopping online, And then I know, like with skills shortages, we can't respond quickly with local manufacturing because it's also full, because we're so short of people that can do, because of, let's leave that for another day.
Yep.
So it's like, well, to be in a position to make the most of the business opportunities that are still there, you actually have to take these other risks or just I know, talking to a business where normally they might import 2 tons of something to be a feedstock for something that they make here, and it's like, do we really just need to import 20 tons because it's now 15 grand to get a container moved from China rather than 1,500, and so all of these things that are just, and so anything with immediate lockdowns that stop cash flow, stop businesses trying to do the resilient thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. There is some work going on in that, but one of the services that is available if you are then exporting any of your stuff is Export Finance Australia. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, I'm actually not exporting at the moment,
no,
so that doesn't directly help me, but it might, it's good to know about it for others.
And then
industry.
There's also the government's just tweaked the rules on the SME loan guarantee because access to finance is a real issue. The government is, I can't speak for government, but I would hazard a guess that government is very unlikely to fund stock because the sheer logistics of it would blow my mind. But what they might do is help get access to businesses to finance to be able to do that. And then, so the SME loan guarantee is supposed to do that. We've been providing a lot of feedback about that because the banks administer the SME loan guarantee. So for those who don't know, 80% of the loan is being guaranteed by the federal government, meaning that there is less risk on the banks to loan to small businesses, small and medium enterprises. And federal government just tweaked the rules to change it so that you didn't have to be eligible for JobKeeper to access that any longer. So that just got changed. There's been issues though with the rules around sensible lending, for want of a better word, clashing with the guarantee offered by the government. And so we've been arguing that very little of that money's been going out by banks because their responsible lending obligations under ASIC prohibit them from lending, even though the guarantee is there. So we've been working with ASIC to try to adjust those things in the background so that all small businesses and medium enterprises can get better access to those loans under the SME loan guarantee.
I think we've also been hearing from businesses too that the loans are fairly low on the priority list at the moment, just because of the current trading conditions are so insurmountable. That loans have really become, they were quite hot topic even a few months ago, thinking that things were going to get better. However, with this Delta downturn, we're actually hearing directly from people going, look, I was thinking about social finance, or I was thinking about small business loans. However, things have changed. Our forecasting models are not secure, and we're just a little bit wary of taking out loans at this stage, just because the business and trading conditions can't be banked on.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll continue to advocate for grants for things like, you know, border closure grants. So, you know, people can't get across, or you can't get your goods across, or you can't get your people here to make the things that you need to sell, or you can't get down to do your business development in Sydney or Melbourne where your major markets are, which, you know, your consultancy down there might lead to the sales, and you can't get down there to do that consultancy. So we'll continue to advocate for those, but we're not the ones with the buckets of money, I'm afraid, and I don't know how full those buckets are. So until those things gets announced, we can just keep trying. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know we're running a little bit short of time, but I did want to also say that we've been assured by the government that in the next few weeks we'll hear about the first round of the grants, so social enterprise grants. So crossing our fingers that the first round of the social enterprise grants will be announced shortly. Also crossing our fingers that the second round of grants for social enterprises, the guidelines, hoping to come out in the next few weeks. Just watch this space. We'll be letting everybody know as soon as those things hit the ground. And also, if we do know that, you know, Sydney's really racing ahead with their numbers currently, and we're watching that border very closely, and really looking at cases if they start sneaking across. That's why we work with CCIQ around the handbook. And I'll very quickly just show that to you. We did put it up on the news page just recently, and we've circulated in the newsletters as well. It's a very simple guide. It takes you through the kinds of things that you might need to understand and get yourself prepared for if you are identified as a tier 1 site, or a site that needs to have deep cleaning, or even just the mitigation of your perception within your business community around what happens to you and your business. Sometimes there's been some evidence of people not being terribly pleasant about the conditions of that. So it takes you through a step-by-step analysis of what has to happen, who you might need to contact in terms of health, the health departments and units in your local areas, how you deal and manage with your staff at that point, and how you talk to your customers, and the kinds of messaging that you might like to start to think about. So whilst that's not a big priority up here in Queensland currently, we do think that it's important for businesses to just start to prepare themselves if they are unfortunate enough to be identified as a site. Some of the things you might need to start to consider, and not do it as reactively maybe, and just be able to work through a bit of a format, touch points and formats. So we'll make sure that that goes out to you again. We are recording this session, so we will distribute this as well as the document that Peter's shared with us, with all the different health guidelines and the tips and the support mechanisms and the business grants and all of the other wonderful good things that they put together in their package. We'll also circulate the handbook just so you can have it handy just in case you need it. And always also reach out to QSEC through either Leanne or myself, and just let us know how you're going. We know that times are tough. We're really here to help. We are at some of these meetings that the Queensland Small Business Commission is at, as well as CCIQ, as well as a whole heap of different partners, and constantly referring your stories back up the line so that we get a really good picture of what's happening on the ground. So unless there's any more last minute burning questions, we're going to call it quits and say thank you very much to Peter for joining us from the Queensland Small Business Commission. I hope that shed a little bit of light as to some of the packages and things that are out there for support. And do know that we're here, only a phone call away or an email away to help support you. So well done, everybody, and let's keep trucking. See you all soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Elise.